Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Burke, licensed clinical psychologist here in New York. I used to teach at Cornell. I was trained at the Institute of Psychiatry in London. After 9/11, I went down to, as a lot of first responders did, to try and help out with the survivors from the World Trade Center, and found a protocol that was really effective in treating post-traumatic stress. After being down there for a year and coming back and realizing how effective the protocol was, we founded a not-for-profit organization in an attempt to get that protocol certified by the American Medical Association, which requires doing a great deal of research, and approved for clinical use across the country. And that's kind of where we are now. The national press and the money available on veterans from actually the Vietnam era up to those coming back from the modern wars, and have done the 3 research studies that we've completed on male and female veterans, 90 altogether, who've come back with serious post-traumatic stress. It's taking some developments from the field of psychology that are really basically very different than clinical psychology has been done over the last 75 years, and applying them to a clinical, very specific problem, which is showing the remarkable results that we're getting. I mean, most therapies do not really work over 50% of the time. Most of them run about 30% on specific problems that are measured. Right. The fact that we're getting 90% remission in a scientifically rigorous measurement of both the diagnosis, the tested response, validated, of post-traumatic stress, as well as the behavioral symptoms, nightmares, flashbacks, and directly related emotional problems, is remarkable. Very few therapeutic interventions have anything like those results. And to be honest with you, I was surprised as anything that doing it in a rigorous research setting was producing parallel results to what we were seeing clinically. So from that perspective, this is remarkable stuff. But it's also, I think, the first step in making known a new way of doing therapy at a basic level. Using these new tools of clinical psychology, let's call them, okay? When you apply them to post-traumatic stress, what it appears to do is turn the neurological on switch for fighting or flighting that's been turned on by a traumatic situation into the off position. So I've had, without exaggeration, 15 or 20 Vietnam vets having nightmares, unable to sleep in the same bed with their wives because of how virulent their movements are, tell me after 2 hours, what happened? What's gone on here? I haven't felt like this about those memories in 50, 45 years. Right in the middle of the treatment center. What's they can feel like a biological shift. It's that pronounced clinically when you see it sometimes. So that when you understand, and I got this after 9/11, I mean, the memories that some of those poor people were living with. I mean, what happened in the actual morning and afternoon, is pretty much cleaned up when you hear the stories and the rest. When, as a clinician, when you're being with the people and they're explaining to you how the day progressed to them and what they actually saw, it's grotesque. I mean, it's hard to. I'd say portions of it now, but it really it goes beyond how we normally communicate in public in terms of the graphic pain and horror to what it is. Except when you're doing the work with them, you realize they're not remembering those things. They're reliving them 2 or 3 times a week sometimes, as if they're happening. They're waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They don't get calm again till noon the next day. And we don't get that from the outside. And then when you look at a lot of the recent soldiers coming back and the incidents of alcohol, drugs, etc., it's very hard not to try and deal with the psychic pain in some way to escape it, if I could say it that way. And then when they can't, which I think that the mechanism is neurological, it's put in there so that if a caveman almost gets eaten by a lion, he's supposed to avoid lions and remember it for the rest of his life. So it's not supposed to go away. I can remember going out to a client after 9/11. I was on Lexington Avenue, and a woman called me, an executive. On her cell phone, she was under the bench on the subway station in Lexington Avenue. Something had triggered a flashback. Well, she wasn't on the subway station. She was on the sidewalk outside the building when they were realizing it was going to come down, and they all began to flee. So that, I mean, you think of this. This is, on a subway station. This is a conscious woman. This is an executive. This is a person who, for those half hour or so in the flashback, could not call herself back and get herself back on the subway station, so to speak. And the terror that you feel, very few people acknowledge what it feels like to be profoundly terrified. And these people do it oftentimes 4 or 5 times a week. The 3 studies that we've completed with the 90 veterans, the first is already published in a peer-reviewed journal. The other 2 are being prepared for publication. Actually, the second one's already been submitted. The third will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We've done 60 men and 30 women veterans. And all of the results have come out with over 90% remission of PTSD symptoms and the scientific diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. The replication studies that we now have going, we should have done by the end of the year. There's another 4 of those. So we'll be up to something like 200 veterans treated by the end of the year. But also, most significantly, we took the protocol to a group of neurologists who were looking at the neurological changes in the brain related to post-traumatic stress. And we've done a pre-pilot, 5 veterans thus far, which measure using EEG what the brain looks like before, and they have a very clear PTSD format in terms of the particular brain waves and what's activated and how. And then we did the protocol, and then we measured them after. And we have very, very clear pre and post neurological results. Now, scientifically, that's been the holy grail of PTSD treatment measurement, if I could say that. We've probably spent nationally $400 or $500 million trying to get that, and this is the first time that I've seen it.